welcome. We are so thrilled to have you. So thrilled. If you wouldn't mind giving us just a little bit of a bio, who you are, how you came to be, what your passions are, and what work you do.
Yeah, boy, let's see. So my background is, as for the last 25 years or more, I'd have to count, I've been a physical therapist. And I kind of came to that the more traditional route, but didn't last in that traditional route very long because spirit said otherwise. So I've worked in orthopedics and kind of evolved into craniosacral therapy, myofascial release therapy, all which are whole body approaches. And so now I have my own practice. I run an integrative health and wellness practice where I get to work with chronic pain and beyond. So it's been really an adventure. That's my professional bio, and what I'm passionate about. Oof, we got time for that?
Yes, sure
I
do.
am really passionate about helping people find their inner spark. So my business is called Inner Wisdom Wellness, and I like to call myself an inner wisdom tour guide.
I love that.
So my role is to really help people find what is within themselves that they haven't been able to get to, what might be within themselves that are blocks to them finding their highest self, their deepest self, their most expanded self.
Nice. That's incredible.
And I'm passionate about, I guess the other thing I would say is I'm just passionate about moving. And I mean, that makes sense as a physical therapist, but I have been a mover and I guess a shaker since I was probably first out of the womb. My mother would probably agree to that. So that has fueled a lot of my beginning days, and I'm happy to say kind of brought me back to where I was in the beginning now, today, many years later.
That's awesome. That's incredible. What is it about your journey that you feel led you to where you are, that you then are able to tap into others and help them find their spark in that same manner?
Yeah. So I think that, again, back to when I was a young child, I was full of energy and full of vitality and moved. And I think there were no edges for me. I, was constantly dancing and moving and expressing myself. And that continued until I was about 3-4 years old. And I don't really know an event other than kind of life being life came in. I'm the second of four children, and my brothers, one ahead of me and two below me, we're all very close in age. So I think there was a place of kind of overwhelm in my mom and my dad's life that I took on a role. I became a good girl. I didn't ruffle feathers, and that really meant that big container that I started in got really small, so that I could toe the line, make sure that I wasn't the one causing them angst or stress. And unfortunately, that kind of turned back in on myself when I was a young teenager and went through changes that my body went through. And to kind of comprehend what that was, I lost control. The rigid box I had put myself in, my body started changing, as it does when we're young females in our teenage years. And I developed an eating disorder. So that was part of my journey. And I really own what it gave me, but it really, it was kind of that got turned inside on myself. Which wasn't a healthy outcome. So
Right.
Finding my way back from that was definitely a number of years and a return to kind of honoring who I was when I was really young and vibrant.
Right.
Again, I can speak to that really, really wholeheartedly, but that was a tough time, to move through, and it brought me, I think, to a place where I recognized I didn't want to be in that box anymore. And I was really grateful that my own inner wisdom gave me the insight that I needed to say, this is not how you want to live the rest of your life. So I'm not.
That's awesome.
and and that was, when I moved through that. I kind of, moved into the world and explored. I lived out on the West Coast for a while, and then decided eventually to go back to school for physical therapy. And my dad's background, I know Chelsea knows some of this, of course, but my dad was a psychotherapist, and my dad was definitely out of the box as a psychotherapist. He used to talk about energy, and he used to talk to his partners in his practice, and he would talk about energy, and they would, and they were really progressive for their time, but they would say, "What is this energy stuff you were talking about?" So, I had an early exposure to it, but at the age when my dad was meditating on a bench in the middle of our living room or reading books that today I adore, that was not my thing. But at least I was exposed to it. I was introduced to it.
That's incredible. That's awesome. I love that.
I actually have a question for you. What was it as you were going through that period of your eating disorder? What was it that was kind of like the thing that helped you move past it? Was it working with somebody? Was it discovery on your own? Was it a book that you read? Like, how was it that you were able to come to the conclusion, I don't want this to be my life anymore, but also that you were actually able to take actionable steps in order to move past that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it, was a combo of what you just asked. So I did work with a therapist. I mean, again, my dad is a psychotherapist. So, kind of, I don't know if the right word would be irony, but, he really couldn't help me. He was too immersed. He was my, really my mentor, my teacher, but he was not my therapist. And so when I started working with somebody, I can still remember sitting in one of my therapy sessions with the therapist, and he said, went into this long diatribe about, when you look at an orange, you think about it as this thing that could, pack on pounds or, change your life so incrementally. You don't just pick it up and eat it for the sheer pleasure of it. And I think there was something that switched for me at that point where I thought, I am giving 110% of my energy to what goes in and out of me. And there is no quality of life with that, right? There is no, I mean, I know that dancing 3-year-old was in there, but she wasn't getting a voice and she wasn't getting heard. And I think, like the fear tactics had been used. Everybody can tell you all the bad things that will happen if you continue on in this lifestyle. That didn't matter. I needed to find it within myself because, again, part of it was looking at myself in the mirror and recognizing I am an incredible, radiant being. And I couldn't do that for those years that I went through that. I just wasn't seeing me. So there was a switch that flipped where I thought, I have a choice, right? This is the fork in the road. Either I keep going down this path, and it's going to be a tight, controlled world, or I shift to a path that's really mine to decide how I want to move through it. And by the love of spirit, I did. So that was the path I ultimately chose. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Do you feel like this experience was integral for you to be able to connect with your patients experiencing chronic pain and the mental load associated with experiencing chronic pain?
Yeah, I do think so. There was a period of time between when I really will say that I kind of chose the second path and I started working as a PT. I actually I worked in corporate wellness for a number of years. So, again, eating disorder, chronic exerciser, whatever pattern that was. And through that, I think I found that place of where I could really step into being a healer, being, a support for other people in that way. And yes, I mean, the fact that, my journey moved through to helping people really get to the depth of what's going on in their body did have a component of what I was able to do for myself. Yeah, definitely true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually one of the most potent resources for my clients coming in to work with me now is a group of psychotherapists who previously worked with an eating disorders population, right? They know what I do. They know how I can hold that container for the people that they work with. And it's a really profound place to be, to support that.
Mm-hmm. Being somebody who also works heavily in that chronic pain population, I find that there are a lot of times that patients want to come in and they think it's like a tissue problem. They're like, I need a stretcher, I need a strengthener, I need the manual therapy, or I need the treatment done. And I find that it's a lot of conversations about, helping them to recognize that while their body is still having a very real, painful response to what's happening, the actual structural tissue problem is not really the thing that's the problem anymore. And that is that remembered pathway of what's going on. And how, in order for them to kind of get to a place where they want to get to, it's usually going to be a multifactorial approach, and there's usually going to be multiple practitioners involved with that. How do you go about, do you have that type of a conversation? Do you find that practice in the same way for, like, that's how it works in your practice as well? And if so, kind of who are the other practitioners that you tend to lean on to bring into that team to help people get all the way there? And how do you talk to your patients about why, why these other practitioners are important to the team?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, a couple of layers of that for me. One, just as I said, I have a lot of referrals that come through from other practitioners, so that they have clients who are doing the psychotherapy side of things, and the psychotherapist recognizes there's not a connection with the body with that person's body, that they really need to come home to themselves in that way. So it's perfect. Those are I always say those are really perfect referrals to what I do, because they have that support. And it's interesting. I have a couple of them right now, and I love that they set up their appointments so that they see me and then they meet with their talk therapist.
Oh, that's great.
And it's just so, because we've been in the body, we've been, really noticing things that the mind is really masterful at not noticing, right? Don't pay attention to that really uncomfortable place. And the body takes me there. We sit and work with that. And then they get on their, therapy session, and it's just so profound. But I also have a lot of other, pool of practitioners. I actually work inside of an acupuncture clinic. So I have an acupuncturist that I am very close to, and we, cross referral a lot. I also have a massage therapist. So, a little different nuance. And, certainly, I mean, I didn't mention it earlier, but I work as a coach as well. And that's another place where, I'm really passionate about finding people a right connection, maybe outside of that medical side of things, that gives them an ability to walk that journey differently than maybe I do as their PT.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, because I call in the mental health professional a lot. It's one of those things where I kind of tell people, like, I can help you put the Band-Aid on the problem. I can help bring you back into the body and feel the things that are going on. But if the stress response is what's exacerbating this pain, then we need somebody who's going to be able to help manage that side of things, whether it's a mental health professional, a coach, an energy worker, whatever the case may be. But we need somebody on that more cognitive side of things. But it's interesting that you try to match those up together at the same time, because I haven't done that before. And that actually, it seems like hearing it from you say that, it's like, oh my gosh, it seems like such an obvious thing to do. Yes, of course. Let's bring them back into the body, get them more connected, and then go and do that work. So I'm definitely going to pick up that little hint that you just had and start utilizing that in my practice.
Please do.
Yeah, because that's incredible, because it's so true.
And I think what happens so often, because, I mean, again, I often tell my clients when they come in, I'm not treating a diagnosis, which, as a PT, you, Allison, can certainly relate to. That's kind of how we're schooled, right? And this person comes in, and I used to, I'm glad I'm not there anymore, but I used to refer to, I have this shoulder patient, I have this hip patient, I have this patient with back pain. And I remember being in the clinic early on in my years, and I was like, but they have a name. Why do we not call them their name, right? They're my shoulder patient. So that identity with a diagnosis was part of what I had to let go of when I shifted gears. And so I always tell my people, I'm going to treat what shows up when I'm working with you in the body, not what, you become so attached to that. What's so fascinating to what we were just saying about working with a mental health professional is that, I'll be in a place, something will come up for that person and they'll say, oh, but I thought I dealt with, it might be related to, an old injury or a verbal, abuse situation, for example, and it comes up in the tissues. And then they will say, but I thought I worked through that in therapy. I'm like, oh, no, your mind has done a great job, right? It has kept you safe. You are here. We are working on this. And your body has been holding a different story. And that's what's showing up right now. And I think it's just really helping them make peace with, I thought I was done with that. Maybe part of you was. Not all of you. Definitely not all of you.
Yeah. I love that because I think that it's really, really hard for people to understand that the body holds on to things. That I think a lot of people think that the experience happens only in their mind and in their heart, but it's no, that tension you're holding in your pelvic floor, that tension you're holding in your jaw, that tension you're holding in your back is coming from a thing. Your body is responding as if that assault is still happening on a regular basis. And so I think that's awesome that you're able to use your clinical skills in order to find these areas. You mentioned craniosacral therapy and you mentioned myofascial work. Can you describe a little bit in kind of a layman's terms for people that are listening to understand a little bit about what actually is that? Because I think that those are two areas of manual therapy that people kind of think are a little bit potentially woo-woo, a little bit made up, a little bit crazy. How can you actually feel this? And I'm not going to lie, I don't do craniosacral therapy, but I do a lot of myofascial work, and it is hard to describe to people what it feels like. I recognize that I sound like a crazy person when I'm I feel like I'm inside your body and I can feel things moving, and I know I feel like I'm just being taken on a journey through your body, and your body is telling me where it needs to go. I know I sound like a crazy person, but when they feel it, they're like, oh, I get it now,
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Most wonderful.
So how do you handle that conversation?
I do. I spend the first thing I always tell the people when I see them for the first time and I kind of introduce what it is, I'll always ask, what do you know about what I do? And, it depends on where they came from, what they do. And I will go pretty heavily into the educating of the fascial system, that we have this 3-dimensional continuous structure, kind of referred to as connective tissue, but it's throughout the body. So I will often say, if I just laid your fascial system out on the table in my treatment room, it would be a pretty well-defined image of you. And then we would plug in other structures, your bones, your organs, right, your muscles, but all the way down to the very depths of who and what you are is fascia. And so, our nerves are 50 to 90% fascia. Our organs are all encased in this beautiful, intelligent system. And I will say, because of that interconnectedness, you don't just have arm fascia, you don't have, head fascia. It's all connected. So I could work at from your little toe and try to impact your jaw pain because there is a connection there. But I'm going to be more effective if I come more directly at that. And the other part that, again, sometimes takes some education around this whole body system that I'm working in is I'll talk about what's called the fascial voice. So it's this expression of their unique patterns of dysfunction, restriction, kind of connection. So if I'm working on somebody's pelvic diaphragm, the fascia within the pelvic cavity, and they start to develop headache pain, that's their body telling me a really potent amount of information. And then, the question usually comes from them, well, why? Why is that creating headache pain? Well, that's what we're going to find out. So I think the thing in both craniosacral and myofascial release, which are, kind of two entities of themselves, but both very holistic, right? We're looking at this interplay of fascia and the kind of semi-hydraulic pump of our craniosacral system, where we produce our fluid, runs through the the spinal cord bathes our nerves, comes back up, and it creates this beautiful rhythm. And a lot of my clients, when they get on the table and I'll kind of hold areas, they can feel right along with me, and I can, kind of help them tune in to that, which is kind of like figuring out that there was an entire continent you didn't know about yourself, right? Like, it's just such a rich understanding when they have somebody that will, be able to kind of help define that for them. And trust me, I don't know if you get this, Allison or Chelsea, but I have a lot of people say, you look so normal for what you do. I'm still not sure what that means, but I'm not sure what I was supposed to look like, but I laugh every time. You look so normal. Okay, great.
Chelsea and I were literally just talking about this morning. We have a mutual client turned friend, and Chelsea was hanging out with them, and her partner was there and was like, they were just talking about how like she didn't look like what they expected her to look like. With the pentacle.
Surprise!
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know what I'm
Like,
saying?
trust me, there are no blood sacrifices happening.
I don't think that's yeah. It's so funny. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the, when we work in that system, and what I tell people, and I always think this is interesting, the looks I get when I say, I'm going to start as a PT, I'm going to look at your posture. We're going to look at all these other movement pieces, and then we're going to lay down and start to kind of, see what your system is saying. And I say, I'm going to tell you as much as I can about your system and what it's telling me and what information I'm getting, because there's no gain if you walk out and I just hold all the secrets that your body just told me. And it's so amazing to have them, as I share things that are coming up, and I'll say, well, this is what's coming through, is that, and, you watch their eyes get big. And I said, I had to spend a lot of years literally walking around. I probably could have gotten a tattoo that said trust, because that part of me that wanted to doubt everything I was feeling or everything that was coming through, it was insane how often I'd get to the end of the day and they're like, I can't do that. That's not me. And it's not me. I'm just a portal.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm willing to be open and hold that space where, well, again, I'm looking at two of you saying it's magic happens.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It just happens. Does. Right. So I just get out of the way and let it happen, I guess, is probably the best thing I can do some of the time.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's very helpful to hear a different perspective on that, because I feel like I think there's more of us doing this type of work now than there was 5, 10, 15 years ago. But it's not like this is what is being taught in PT school. This is not the standard of how people are treating people. And so it can kind of feel like a lonely island sometimes. So just hearing somebody else kind of say, hey, this is my terminology. This is how we go about it. It's like, okay, so when I have the person and I'm trying to describe it, I'm going about all the ways I can go about it. And I'm still getting that like glossy-eyed kind of skeptical, like, what are you saying? Now I can be like, okay, let's try this other approach to this conversation. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Jeanne.
Yeah, right. You have to figure out what their language is. Well, I'll share with you a story. Yesterday I treated a 1-week-old baby who was born breech, but vaginal breech delivery. And so the mom, 3 different practitioners, the midwife, the acupuncturist that the mom knows, and the chiropractor that the mom knows, all said, get her in for craniosacral therapy. Get her in for craniosacral therapy. So fortunately, she and I had already known each other. So it was an easy, thing to, like, day 2 of this little girl's life. She was like, can I get her in? So yesterday I had this 1-week-old baby. So, when you think people are like, oh, I'm so good at convincing you that what I'm feeling is actually true, you can't do that with a 1-week-old baby. And so I started working. This tiny, amazing being guided me to her neck and her head. And within like seconds of being on her head and neck, her entire back end, and her mom was sitting across from me at the table and was like, she said, I think that's the position she came out in. So I just guided her, and she just unwound herself in the most incredible way. And the mom said to me, you can't make her do that, can you? I said, nope. I also can't make you do it. But we in our heads think, Jeanne's so good, she convinced me to unwind, for example. I'm like, yeah, this little baby didn't know anything. She didn't get the memo. Said, this is the movement you should make upon laying on the table. Nope. She just knew the wisdom of her body, her own beautiful inner wisdom, knew what she needed. And the mom within like 5 minutes said, the baby was on her back as I was treating her. And she said, she doesn't like laying on her back. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, well, if she fusses, we'll adjust. I'm well versed at, making lots of adjustments. She stayed the entire time. I treated this baby for an hour, and didn't have to, but she was doing exactly what she needed. And she stayed on her back, and the mom was just like blown away. It was amazing.
That's incredible.
But that's a point of like, if you think you're convincing somebody, I didn't convince that 1 week old baby.
No, no,
no way.
I find myself trying to be careful about my, like, not being suggestive in my language, because I know what I'm feeling, like I don't need to convince you that I felt what I felt. Sure. What I'm trying to figure out is, did you feel what just happened here, And so there's so many times, which I'm sure you've noticed this as well, especially people experiencing chronic pain have just such like shut off that connection within their body. It's like it was a light switch, just boom, it's done. That part of me does not exist anymore. Mm-hmm. And any slight sensation they experience, just they don't even pick up on it. And so trying to get them to just notice, hey, there was a shift here. Stuff moved. Did you feel that it moved? Like that is something I really try not to give leading language and still get them to pay attention. It's a hard line to walk. But I love the story about the 1 week old.
I totally agree. I think the funniest thing that often happens is, like, you use the word notice. That is one of my favorite words, is when I'm working with somebody's tissues, is what are you noticing? And the to what you were just saying is often they'll say, well, I think I feel. I said, no, it's okay. You don't have to think, just feel. Like, even that languaging is so potent because we're so automatic to think about feeling. No, it's okay. Don't think, just feel. And that sometimes takes people a while to get to.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't even know what she's asking me to do. And I'll say, I'm patient. We'll just wait. We don't need to hurry anything. The body is doing exactly what it needs. You come right on in. I can always get them to feel my hands on them, which is also helpful. Like, what does that feel like? But it's time and time again. I think I feel. Oh, I think what I would feel. No, just feel. Go ahead and just feel.
I like that. I'll hear them say that, and I'm like, if you think you feel something, you feel it. Assume that that's accurate. Yeah. Don't be looking for it. Just assume that that's accurate, that's right. And be okay with it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I say that so often.
You feel it.
Yeah, I'm like, what? Ridiculous. My goodness. This is incredible. I love this so much. That story is incredible. But the 1 week old, like, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I want to touch a little bit about your childhood and talk a little bit about the dynamic with having your father being a psychotherapist and you being one with the woo, and how that really, how it was handled, how it was fostered and cultivated, and how that progressed throughout your life as well. If you are comfortable talking about that, we would love to hear about your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So, before my dad was a psychotherapist, he was a journalist. He actually did sports journalism and then went back to school. But in the time when I was quite little, just barely old enough to talk, my dad would sit with us. Again, I'm old enough where we didn't have computers. We didn't have anything but an old tape recorder, push the button and record on that little cassette tape or a piece of paper. And so many of the conversations when I was a young, very, exuberant little girl were around recording. But he would sit on his typewriter, again, just to date it, he would type on his typewriter the things that would come out of my mouth. And so I have somewhere in my files this particular experience where I was telling my dad who was in the room with us. Now, a human, it was just my dad and I. But the room was completely full of other incredible beings whom I could name without question. So that was really, and I think, I have an older brother. I was probably, I'm thinking around 2 when this started, and my dad didn't push it down. He recorded it. and then kind of, stayed with it. And I think it was just my dad was a creative genius, and he had a really good time with these beings that were in the room with us. And eventually, it's kind of the way that one would describe them. They were imaginary friends. So which I wasn't a good or a bad, it just was what they referred to them. And as I moved through my childhood, I mean, I don't know if some of them went and, took a trip somewhere else, but there were two that really stayed with me, that were Sapi and Coco the witch dog. So I had these two beautiful spiritual beings that were always with me. And I mean, it was kind of part of the conversation, where were they in the house? My mom would ask. And so I feel really blessed that they just kind of went with it. They didn't, squash it. But again, as my life changed, I guess there was a wall that got put up.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, I don't know, somewhere along the last couple decades of journey where I started to learn more along the path of what I do, I really recognized that those were spirit guides. Certainly Sapi and Coco were, and I just was clearly supported in a way that when I was young, I could name. And so part of it is kind of that journey back around to finding that deeper connection and knowing that I'm never alone, right? I mean, my support is right available to me at any point in time. So yeah, that was certainly a big piece of my young journey.
Did you feel like Sapi and Coco came with you everywhere, or were they only in your home? Like, did you remember anything about that?
Yeah, I think they would come along sometimes. And I think that I kind of feel like there was a sense of them with me more than there wasn't. It wasn't necessarily that I didn't set the table for them or make space in the car necessarily, because they didn't need that. So that wasn't a big deal. But I definitely, and again, because my dad was a journalist, he was a storyteller, he would ask occasionally. He would ask about them, and he would, want to know. And certainly when I was quite young, I didn't hesitate to tell him. I knew exactly what they were up to most every time.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I do. I love that. I love that your dad was so receiving of it, and how you can identify that even though you did have a container that was open, that you still had to adjust for society in school and whatever else happened that created that wall for you. I think that that's just so powerful, because so many people don't have that container for that safety in that space to be able to continue to express that big, vibrant energy that almost sort of goes hand in hand with spirituality. It's like it's like permission to really take up all of the space that you want, all of the energy, all of the noise, emotion, and not have to convince anybody else about your beliefs, because you believe it so strongly yourself. And then as you grow up, you then start to try to convince others, right? You're like, my beliefs are coming up against your beliefs. If I believe this strongly and you believe that strongly, and those are conflicting, then there has to be a right and wrong, right? But there's not.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that ability to really carry that belief through your life is just so profound. I'm just so inspired by it. And I feel like you've managed to work it into what you do so seamlessly, and really embody that in the work that you do. I know that you have done a lot of ancestral womb healing and that kind of stuff. Could you touch on that at all? How your spirituality has impacted that work, or even motivated you to do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can't even remember how many years ago, but one of the kind of avenues into what you're referencing is I did a number of classes in what's called heart-centered therapy, and it's really a voice dialogue of going back into, I guess, to start with the tagline of the first class is assume only love, right? And I think that sums up a lot for me, is assume only love. But the idea being that coming into this human experience, we come in and we've taken on, we've inherited certain things from our ancestors, eye color, hair color. You look like your dad, you look like your grandpa or your grandma or your whatever. And my friend Alea Chickley, who developed the heart-centered therapy that I studied and eventually assisted many, many times, I've been blessed to sit in that capacity. But she talks about it as this spiritual emotional virus that we get hair color, we get eye color, and we also inherit things from our ancestral lineage that, came along as well. So perhaps somewhere back in our lineage, so one of our ancestors, who we've likely in this capacity never met, but they made a decision and they cut themselves off from love. And then all the people that came after them, then changed the way that they showed up, right? They didn't have that full capacity to love, for example. That ancestor may have had a loss and closed their heart, and that becomes an energy cyst, it's a blockage for them to really fully embody who and what they are. And that gets passed down in some capacity. And so when I started that work, I'm a mom. I have two beautiful daughters who are young adult women who I cherish, but they were little when I started it. And I still remember I'd go to the classes as I was learning this, and it was this great container that felt safe to do it in. And Alea is just incredible at how she can hold this group. And I'd lay down on the table to do my work, but I would think, well, I'm going to do it for my kids. I'm going to clear this stuff out of my system so that they don't have to have it in theirs. And, somewhere along the line, I figured out that really I get to come home and do it for me. And then the ripples go forward. But it was this really I don't know what you call it, not mom guilt, but mom, well, it's okay to do it if it's for my kids.
Right. Right.
But so I did that work. I continue to use that as a part of what I do when I'm working with people. It's just the most profound thing, though, to experience, coming through and clearing those places that, our whole ancestral lineage has been blocked around. And I did not know my maternal grandparents, but in that course, I've worked with them, and certainly, Chelsea, with working with you with the body code, things have come through that, just to clear that energy around things that are from our ancestors, many of whom we've never met and will not know in this lifetime, but that their decisions and their inabilities carry through in this way with that work.
I love that. That's incredible. I love it. And you led right in. So is there an example of some generational energy blockage that we uncovered within the work that we've done together that you could offer the listeners as a little tidbit, a little story, a peek behind the curtain?
Yeah. I mean, it's been nothing short of incredibly profound to work with you in that realm. And again, kind of back to the place where I used to think I had to do that work for somebody else. I'm really at a different place in my life where this is for me. And of course, again, we can all look at each other and say the ripples of who and what we are in the world are big if we let them. So I'm really owning that. So in working with you, and it's funny, I think the thing that makes me chuckle and then just kind of grit my teeth is how many messages from my lineages on both sides of, my mother, my father, have shown up in our work together. And to clear that in the way that you so beautifully do is again, just another layer of I didn't even know that was there, but oh my God, not carrying that on my shoulders. Literally, that's a lot of what I've come away from sessions thinking, oh my God, I can sit back. I don't have to carry this like backpack of shame,
Oh
might
my
be a good way
gosh.
to kind of sum it up. But it's like the messages that will often come through in working with you around that is, the I'm all alone, the worthiness that I mean, it's just so funny to be like, that again. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Different day, same worry,
Mm-hmm.
worthy wound showing up. But because I keep clearing things away, again, it's almost like my container within myself gets bigger because it can now.
Right. That's incredible. Oh my gosh. I love that visual that you gave us, that being able to like sit back and like not have that on your shoulders anymore. What an incredible feeling to be able to obtain after something
Yeah.
that some people would think is so insignificant. Like I've had clients who are like, okay, get to my stuff now. Like I don't care about the ancestor stuff. Get to my stuff. She's gonna listen to this and she's gonna laugh because she, yeah. And so it really like it makes such a difference in how you feel about yourself, how you even just show up in the world and the decisions that you make, because you don't realize what that programming is doing.
I just feel like while the energy side of things may still feel very abstract to people, it seems kind of, again, along the woo-woo line, unless you've actually experienced it and you can say like, oh, these are the changes that I've experienced. But like even simply understanding just generational trauma, generational parenting, like one of my easiest things that I can tell people is like, okay, like our grandparents were like alive during the Depression, right? So they grew up in very much a money scarcity and a resource scarcity. And so their generation of kids, the primary thing that they were really trying to parent their kids on was get a good, safe job with insurance and a good paycheck. That equals happiness. If you get a good, safe job with insurance and paycheck, that is happiness, right? And so then they had this generation of kids who is now our parents, who instilled in us, get a good, safe job with insurance and a good paycheck. That's what equals happiness. And then we have this entire generation of adults who's like, okay, well, I have a good, safe job with insurance and a good paycheck, and I have my house, and I have the spouse, and I have the kids, and I have the car, and everything on paper looks completely correct. However, I'm insanely unhappy. I'm filled and like ravaged by stress and anxiety. How is this happiness?
Right.
Well, because of the experience that our grandparents had, the best way they knew to help their children avoid that same horrifying experience was to teach them what they taught them. And because they were so horrified about going back into that type of experience, they then put that on their own children, our parents, of like, you've got to make sure that you've got this money because it could disappear like that, And so this like whole generation of like multiple generations of scarcity. And it's like, okay, well, if you can just look back at that and you can see like, I do have scarcity around finances and resources. I do feel incredibly like terrified as to what would happen if I lost my job. Like there doesn't feel like there's a lot of other options, or if I do get another job, I have to get a job in the field that I'm currently in. The idea of going somewhere else is starting over, all of that kind of stuff. And that, in my opinion, comes from a long line of scarcity because we had an entire generation that was just beat down. And they didn't I don't know that if I was growing up in that generation, I would have done things any differently. But that's like a very tangible way to understand this. But it's like, how much of that stuff is happening from the energetic side of things that is still weighing you down? Things that were passed down from grandparent to child over and over and over again from how many generations back that you're just sitting around carrying, having no idea. And then when it gets cleared, it's like, oh my gosh, that wasn't even mine. Like, I really, honestly, I really, why have I cared about that for so long? That's not even mine to care about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Exactly. I mean, I think that's the potency, but until we know, we don't know. Right. And but you're right. The scarcity, I mean, to that end, giving permission to really feel joy or happiness, not until you've checked all these other boxes is that allowed. And, you can't get there.
Yeah.
Right. People are like, no, I can't just feel joy in the simple things because I'm so bogged down by making sure I check all the boxes that my parents, my grandparents, and everybody before me said were vital to my survival.
Yeah.
Not even happiness.
Not even
But
happiness.
survive, just pure survival, right?
Yep.
Yeah, happiness was a luxury that they didn't have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, the majority of people did not have that luxury. The majority of people were literally trying to survive.
Right.
And like, I get that, but we're in a very different world now where we actually have the opportunity to thrive and be happy and show the rest of the world how they can do that. And then we can, rising tide raises all ships.
Rising tide lifts
Whatever.
all ships. Is that what she says?
We can do that, we can do that now.
Yep.
Like some of the generational, the energetic generational stuff that like I had gotten passed down from my mom's side. And I love my mom's mom. My grandma was one of the most incredible humans I've ever met in my entire life. And she was like, she ran a beauty salon out of her home. She took care of her like invalid in-laws. She took care of her alcoholic sister. They would go to her house like once a week to like clean up her house. She had 5 kids that she raised. And this was back at a time where you didn't go and buy clothes. You didn't really go to the grocery store. You made all your own food. You grew your own food. Like she had a hard life, and this woman was incredible. And she died when I was very young, but I remember her coming over to our house, and I always loved when she was there because she would just have just the countertop full of cookies, and she would like sneak me cookie dough and be like, don't tell your mom. And I told my mom that one time, and she was like, do you think I honestly didn't know that she was giving, like, obviously I know she was giving you a cookie dough. And I was like, well, it still felt like this special little secret we had. She was a woman who beat breast cancer in the 80s.
Wow.
Where people didn't do that.
No.
And then she ended up passing. She had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and she passed in the 1990s. But the thing with my grandma was that she never sat down. She was always doing, always busy, always getting everything done, taking care of every other person. And it was, the kind of the standard of this is how the mom acts, And so then my mom and her sisters acted that way. And then I act that way. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting when one of the things was like, that I was passed down is you'll never be able to do enough. That was one of the generational curses that were passed down from my line. And I was like, if that doesn't resonate so insanely strong, the guilt and shame for a long time, I genuinely thought at my deepest core, I was a lazy person. Because all I ever wanted to do was to get everything done so I could just rest. Because you don't earn rest until everything else is done.
Right.
And so it was like, that totally makes sense. Like, I would love to sit down and just watch old British TV. That would be amazing to me, but I don't deserve it because there's that laundry to do. I don't deserve it because I haven't written that blog post yet, or whatever the case may be. And it was like, gosh, that's not even mine to carry. Like, who even knows how far down that was? Like, oh my heavens. So when I was able to like drop that, I'm telling you, within a couple weeks, I was just like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to rest here. Like, because there's still like the patterns you have to break,
Yes.
But the drive to want to act that way. Yeah, the patterns are deep, and I still have to work at those and be like, no, you're allowing yourself to rest so that you can function and do the things you want to do. But that like deep drive of like the guilt and shame and laziness, quote, laziness of sitting there and doing, quote, nothing, that part wasn't there anymore. And so it's all very, very interesting stuff. And again, you don't, until you give it a try, you don't get it. And we sound like crazy people. We know we sound crazy.
Yes.
Well, so I just have to share the story, and I'll make it as brief as possible. But years ago, I was assisting this heart-centered therapy class, and I wasn't in the class, but I was assisting it. So I had to partner up, and we did a session. And the quick backstory is we had adopted these 2 cats. They were fairly young kittens, and the one had a very intensely wired nervous system. Her mother had distemper when she was in utero. But so she had this like kind of a balancy. I mean, we have her, she's like 20 years old, and we still have this cat. So she's lived a long, beautiful life. But in the early days, she was very, very finicky, and she would only connect with my older daughter And like we just kind of gave her a wide berth of energy. So fast forward, I'm in this class. We've had this cat a couple of months, and in the heart centered therapy. You close your eyes, you're giving something eyes, and without going into the detail, I see these eyes of the cat. So in my head, my mind says, "Oh, it's Ellie's cat. It must be about Ellie." So I do this session, and I go through the whole thing, and then I go home. I've been gone for 4 days. I go home. I'm sitting down that evening. My kids are young, and they've gone to bed now. And I'm going through the pile of mail after being gone for a while. And this cat, her name is Precious. Precious comes to the foot of where I'm sitting, and has never wanted anything to do with my husband and I. And he's sitting across from me in the family room, and I'm just going through there. And he said, "Honey, I think the cat wants to get on your lap." And I said, "No, she doesn't." And I keep going through, and she starts, getting a little closer. And so I take the mail off, and she jumps up on my lap, curls around, and sits down. Never had she done this before. So what came to me after I was, again, my little naysayer was like, this can't be actually anything to do with the session I just did, hours ago, but I'll roll with it. So I tell my husband, who's very loving and supportive, and he's like, whatever. And after about 5 days of being home, he's like, "Tell me again what you did." And so I walked him through the session that I had done in this partnership in class. And he's like, "I think the cat got the memo." So it's kind of like the 1-week-old baby we were talking about. I said, "Well, you really think so?" And so it's one thing for me, who's kind of immersed myself in this world. But my husband, after a few days, is like, "What happened to our cat?"
That's incredible.
So I love that it was such a gift for me, because now, kind of what we were speaking to before, where people are thinking it's a little woo-woo, but they're kind of, there's that part of them that's really hoping they can kind of, embrace it. And I tell them the cat story, and they're like, "Wait, what?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, my cat didn't get the memo. My cat didn't get any indication that my energy had shifted. Something vibrationally within me was different, and now gave that cat permission to connect with me.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately with others in our family who she had not really had any interest in being a part of. Again, she is a completely, if you'd known her then and you know her now, you would not even know this was the same cat, other than she looks the same, because she really understood something had shifted energetically without reading it or me telling her, because I don't think she understands my English. She just knows I feed her. But it's a great story, right? That like what is actually possible to when we step into really more of who and what we are energetically. So
yeah,
that's incredible.
Well, the energy, I mean, Chelsea and I are obviously really huge into this, and Chelsea has definitely a deeper connection to it than I do. I'm more of a fangirl, I should say. And so, but it's incredible. Like, I'm like, man, I wish I could do that. But it's like, I mean, Chelsea works with us for our dog, because like she was a rescue. She was found on the side of the road. And sometimes she'll go through these periods of very erratic behavior where I'm just like, could you just chill? Could you just stop being so dang needy for a second? You're not even my dog. You are here for my son. Go find your boy. I'm not interested. I have enough to do as it is, that I don't need one more needy being asking for my attention. And she'll just be like up my butt, following me around the entire house. I'm like, I need to go to the bathroom. You are worse than a toddler. Get away from me. And then we'll work with Chelsea, and she's like, oh, well, and labels all the things that's going on. And then we clear all that. And she's like, she's still, there's still the processing period where she's figuring out. But then less than a week later, she's just like, I walk in, and she's just like, we'll kind of come over and sit down, and then I'll pet her. And then she's like, all right, I'm good. And then she'll go lay down again. And I'm like, ugh. So whenever she's erratic, I'm like, Chelsea, I need you to fix Emma again. I don't know what happened. She's being crazy. So
she's being needy again.
The next layer of whatever's in the way.
Yeah, she's being needy. Please get her taken care of again. Because when she gets agitated, she starts, they know, yeah, there's something going on with her. Because she'll get agitated. She starts chewing on hardback books, which means that she'll pull them off the bookcase. She will chew up any clothing that's on the floor, like anything that has a scent to it, but she'll only chew out like the crotch of underwear or of shorts, or like the heels of the socks, like anything that has a scent to it. And like really what her issue predominantly is protective.
Oh yeah.
Like super protective.
I say, tell the sleepwalking story.
Oh, where she started guarding the stairs?
No,
Which one?
with Aria, she wouldn't leave the hallway.
Yeah. So my kiddos sleepwalk. And so we have to have a gate at the top of the stairs. Did you? We have my second and my third sleepwalk. And so we have a gate at the top of the stairs to make sure that, like, because we have found my son, like, curled up in a ball at the top of the stairs before, and he did not know how he got there. And so it's like, okay, we need to, like, keep everybody safe. Yeah. And my older son, Emma, is his dog, kind of like a support dog for him. And so every single night she sleeps in his room, sleeps up on his bed, snuggled up at the bottom of the bed. Like, they are best friends. He gets up in the morning and she just follows him around. Like, they are inseparable. Unless I'm awake, in which case she is attached to my side. She always is sleeping in Tanner's room. And this one night, she like wouldn't come in the room. And Tanner's just getting upset. He's like, Mom, I just want to go to bed and Emma won't come with me. I'm like, just leave your door open. She'll come in when she's ready. There's something bothering her, obviously. She'll go in there eventually. And then, so she just decided to like stay in the hall. And then sure enough, Aria got up and was delirious and didn't know what was going on. It was Aria, right? Yeah. Didn't know what was going on. And so we went and we got her. And she's kind of a little bit of a brat when she sleepwalks. Like, she won't go downstairs, but she has the dexterity to, like, open the gate. So it's like she'll just kind of, like, open the gate and, like, leave it open and be like, have fun, Luke. Peace out. Like, it's like, what are you doing here? Like, she's just kind of a little bit of a stinker when she's like, she's just not really with it. But anyway, so we find her and, you know, we get her kind of back into her bedroom and get her situated. And then she kind of calmed back down. She went back to sleep and everything like that. And then Emma just gets up and walks back into Tanner's room and was done. It was like, nope, I needed to protect the hall. I needed to make sure she was okay. I could tell she was off. There was something going on with her. And so, like, once Ari was back in bed and was settled and good for the night, then Emma was like, all right, peace, I'm out. I'm going over to Tanner's room now. And I was just like, okay. So now I try not to fight it too much. It's just, if she just gets in that, like, barking in my face and she wants attention, I'm like, Chelsea, do something with Emma. She's driving me crazy.
Yep. Take this over, Chelsea. Clear whatever's in the way there.
Yes.
Emergency appointment, awesome. Please. Before I open the front door and just let her outside on her own. Take care of my son's dog, please.
Oh, she's such a sweetie.
She's actually an incredibly good dog. She's very protective. She's very sweet, and she's a very good dog. Great. And Tanner's done an amazing job taking care of her. Like, he doesn't fuss when it's time to go out and walk her. Like, it's 20 degrees outside, but she needs a walk, so he'll like bundle up and he'll go do it. And so, yeah, he does a really good job taking care of her. And I try not to be too grumpy because I know that he takes it personally. If she did something bad, it was like his fault. He should have trained her better. And it's like, no, you were 10 when we got this dog. Right. You did a great job. So, but anyway.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Oh, that's awesome.
It's cool to see the energy stuff on, like, beings who can't verbally speak to us, and you can see a change in their behavior that it's like, okay, this is it, because I'm sure as heck not doing anything different. It's not like I'm sitting here with treats and training you and doing all the things, because let's be real, I ain't got time for that. No, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Talk about your great teachers. There they are. Because like I said, that's just, can't make that stuff up. I cannot convince a four-legged, beautiful being to do whatever it is I think is right. They're going to do what they pick up in the energy, for sure. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has been incredible.
This has been incredible. Jeanne, we love everything you've shared with us. Do you mind sharing how people can find you? Because you are able to work across state lines, correct? With coaching and stuff?
With coaching, yes. Yep. So, I mean, I'm a physical therapist in the state of Minnesota, but beyond that, I do other, things that are, yep. So I am my company is Inner Wisdom Wellness. So my website is Inner Wisdom Wellness MN, as in the state of Minnesota, at .com. So you can find me there. I don't have a big social media presence. That's not been, so I can't give you a lot of that because I don't have time for that. I don't, and it's not where I shine.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine. We will definitely, we'll link your website below. And then once we get off, what I would love to do is to get the information of the heart-centered care, the woman who you learned that from, because I think that'd be really interesting to be able to learn more. And maybe we can link her information below as well, just so that people can find that for those who are interested. Yeah. Does that have to be in person, or is there a virtual option for learning that?
Yeah. No, she actually does most of that remotely now. So she's, during the last couple of years has traveled. So she does some in-person classes, but she also offers that on a Zoom option. So yeah, and even that work can be done on a phone. So it's, it's something that can be easily done. The other thing I do is called Healing from the Core. And that's also another program that's kind of, works with the embodiment state of what we're talking about with all of this. So that's another probably really good resource to share with people as well. And I can definitely get you that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll definitely get those from you, because I think there's even like just regular people who aren't in healthcare are probably would be very interested in that. But definitely any healthcare practitioners who are listening to this, who want to bring more to their practice, a great way to help connect and understand what we're feeling and seeing within the body, I think is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to share that stuff. Great.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you again so much for sharing your beautiful wisdom with regards to your childhood and into adulthood, and how you've been able to integrate all of those amazing experiences into your practice, helping people with chronic pain and using some less than traditional methods that should be more traditional in helping people with that. For anybody who is listening, if you are interested in learning a little bit more on how to kind of bring yourself back into your body, understanding that physical manifestation of the emotional symptoms, how you can start to recognize those physical changes within your body as you're feeling those emotions. Chelsea and I are doing a seminar together if you're in the Columbus area on April 8th from noon to 3. Mm-hmm. And then we're doing a happy hour afterwards. You can come hang out. It'll be so much fun, but we are keeping the group very small in order to have a nice, comfortable, small container and not feel like anybody is on display in a big group or anything like that. If you like what you've been hearing, if you're enjoying the stuff that Chelsea and I talk about and the amazing, incredible experts that we bring in to kind of talk about these alternative ways to really get the deep healing, please feel free to share this with people. We really just want to kind of better our entire community and help people kind of find the fact that there are different ways outside of what we are told is going to help us, and that these alternative ways are really the way that we're going to find deep healing and really find that life that we've been looking for. So please share this with anybody who you know could use a listen, and we hope everybody has an absolutely fantastic week.